Today, I want to talk a little bit about the habit of reevaluation and the importance of occasionally. This is not something that has to be done every day, but occasionally and regularly, you need to take the time to reevaluate. And what prompted the discussion about this particular habit? Two things. One is that I am focused on habits this month for another project. So I'm thinking through lots of different uh, habits and things that we do. But the other was a conversation that I just had with a colleague on a project that she's working on. And we were discussing paying the price that everything we do has a cost attached to it, that there is a price to be paid, and we have to be willing to pay that price. And I'm not going to talk about the principle of paying the price, but the evaluation process that has to go along with making the determination about whether or not the price is worth paying, and the importance of coming back to that as you move along the time continuum, moving towards your vision or your goal. So it starts with having a vision, right? You have a vision for your life, you have a vision for your business, you have goals within those visions that you're going to take in order to get where you're trying to go with the vision. And along the way, you've got some decisions that have to be made. So you have to decide whether or not the price to be paid for obtaining that vision, obtaining the individual goals are worth what you have to put into it. So I talked about, in my conversation with a colleague, we talked about a number of different examples. The price that athletes pay, in terms of the time that it takes for practice and prepping their body in order to get to the highest levels of their sport, whether it's professional or Olympic athletes or what have you. The other one that's a big issue here in California is real estate and the location of some of the real estate in order to be able to purchase a home and afford a home may mean having commute times that are 3 or more hours per day. And you have to make a decision about whether or not that's worth the price you have to pay. Now, where the habit part comes in is the evaluation of whether or not that price is worth it. You make a decision at the onset, but life often gets in the way, right? Things change, your circumstance changes. Maybe when you originally started on a journey of whatever it is, maybe you were single or maybe you were married. Maybe you didn't have children yet, or you had children and the children have since left home and are off to college or are grown and on their own. And so, as your situation changes, as your circumstances change, that may necessitate the reevaluation of whether or not the cost is still worth paying. And so you start with the vision of what it is you want, and then you determine that there's a cost in order to get to the vision. And I'm going to tell you right now, there is a cost to absolutely everything. There are no free lunches, and therefore there is a cost. You just have to determine what that cost is. Then you have to decide whether or not you're willing to pay the cost. But the habit comes in from the reevaluation of that and making a determination over time, maybe not every day, but maybe regularly. I don't know. It depends on what it's costing you. If it's costing you your health, or it's costing your relationships, you may have to evaluate that or reevaluate that situation more frequently than if it's not costing you that. Maybe it's something that costs money and you put the money down and that's the end of it. And maybe there's a a re-upping of the subscription or whatever it is, and then you can make a new determination at the end of whatever that time frame is. But if it's something that's impacting your health or impacting your relationships, you're probably going to want to do some reevaluation more frequently. And definitely every time your situation, your life circumstances change, you'll want to make a reevaluation of that. So I wanted to bring that up. It was on my mind and just had the conversation um, on another in another forum, and so it was on my mind. I thought, well, this is a good thing to talk about, to touch on, because it's probably not something that we would ordinarily put in the category of a habit. But I want you to get into the habit of really paying attention, being mindful and present in the decisions of your lives and the what you're doing when you make taking actions, making decisions, creating habits, understanding what works for you and what doesn't work for you, and not just operating on autopilot or operating from a place of this is what I want and I'm just going to go for it without evaluating what it's costing you and if it really is worth what you're putting into it. So that's what I have for you this week. That was, we talked about habits every day this week. I'm going to revisit this concept of habits in another week or two. Next week, I've got something else in mind for you guys for 5 and 5. But I'm going to come back to this concept of habits, and I'm probably going to come back to it multiple times over the course of the next few months because it's such an important aspect of who we are. And the very nature of habits is that once we've gotten them in place, once the actions that we're taking have become habits, we tend not to think about them again. But I think just like anything else, you have to reevaluate. So we're going to reevaluate the habits. We're going to reevaluate what it costs to get things that we want. We're going to pay closer attention to what's going on in our lives and not live our lives by autopilot anymore. So again, thank you for joining me this week for 5 and 5. I look forward to seeing you next week. Have an absolute wonderful weekend. Take care.